So how did you guys begin your foray into animation?
Right. So that's the interesting thing is, so Man of Action, you could argue that that is the, about the the action kind of forward stories. But if you know us and you know us well as far as creators, Steve loves to get pretty heady. His stuff is sometimes it's very interior stuff. His stories. And Joe Kelly likes horror just as much as anything else. He loves to just totally mistreat characters. And, I think probably Joe Casey and I are probably the ones that I'm an infant. I still love just superheroes flying through the sky and punching each other, and Joe Kelly's Godland and whatnot are all these. He he most definitely loves comic lore, and he loves to take a look at lore and re-up it for a new audience. So, anyways, how we got into animation, that was the question. One of our mutual friends, who was an editor over at Wizard, Matt Senwright, had we were just friends with Matt. Matt had this thing that he'd been trying to get off the ground, this claymation thing for the longest time, and he always was showing us. We're like, "That's really cool. You should get it going. You should get it going," not knowing that it would then turn into Robot Chicken. But
Wow.
at that time, he's just one of the guys that we would. At San Diego, oh man, let's have
Yeah,
dinner
let's
just
hang
because
out.
hey, I haven't seen you in a while. And he's just a good guy, and he was a writer over at Wizard magazine at the time. But so his animation career started before ours, and he had with the Robot Chicken stuff, and Seth Green, he had hooked up with him, and they started writing these things, and they were hilarious. And he met Sam Register over at Cartoon Network, who was the head of development at the time, or one of the heads of development, who said, "Hey, do you have any superhero stuff?" Because Sam was itching to do something that was, you know, Turner and Warner Brothers are sister companies underneath the same umbrella at the time, but he was always finding it difficult to work with DC on their titles. He loved all of their titles, but there's a whole bunch of approval processes.
Absolutely.
So he wanted to get something that was a Cartoon Network superhero thing. And he had asked Matt, "Do you have anything?" He goes, "No, I don't really do that stuff, but I do have some friends who maybe could, Man of Action." And so they were looking for this, the kind of the missive after talking to him. He's like, something like the Fantastic Four or something like that. It's like, I don't know about the Fantastic Four, but let us pitch you some different ideas. And we went in and we did this thing called 20 Pitches. It's legendary in our own minds, but actually it's gotten around town a little bit. We did 20 pitches in 20 minutes, and we just came in with a whole bunch of different ideas. And after a minute, the four of us would just read 5 different ideas. And Sam, if you've ever met him, he is a force of nature, and he's actually somebody you should actually talk to. You get some great stories. He's one of these guys like, nah, yeah, okay, that's great. Let's do this. I love Hollywood, but he's great.
I love it.
He's really quite a character, and
Sounds
he's
like a 1950s newspaper editor.
a little bit. That, and also he just he has very specific tastes, and his tastes are, I'd like to say, spot on because of those 20 that we pitched. Ben 10 was one of them, and so it wasn't called Ben 10 at the time, but it's called Force 10 at the time, and it was based on this character I had who would switch with versions of himself from multiple dimensions. Is a band, but if there was the end a Ben who grew up on a planet where the polar ice caps melted and all humanity became amphibians. So it was Amphibi-Ben. So he would literally multidimensional, like he would switch with himself. Ben would then
Come in and take his place.
Take his place, or one where the gravitational pull of the Earth was so much more powerful. So it was a really short, squat, powerful, muscular Ben, bone structure kind of thing. And Sam at the time, he loved the idea of all the multiple characters in one, but he's like, I don't know about the multidimensional part of it. You know, that's too heady for kids. So he picked it up, and we started developing it with him. And we first kind of went looking at the superhero angle, and it was like, this is really kind of dial H for hero if we do it that way, you know. And that wasn't really where the idea first came in. We wanted, a 10-year-old hero, and we wanted how a 10-year-old would deal with powers too, and threats and things like that. We wanted that perspective. So we came in and settled in on the alien stuff, and that worked very well. And a lot of different titles were passed around, and I think it's Steve who came up with the Ben 10 title. But then it off and running. It took about 2 years of development, but then when it hit, all of a sudden we were in animation and we're man of action. What else do you got? Before that, it was like, well, we're all looking for some kind of Teen Titans. And then after that, it was like, wow, we're all looking for something Ben 10. You got anything Ben 10? It's like, well, we did.
We just did that, and now we want to do our next thing.
But of those 20 that we pitched, one of them was a version of Generator X. Another one was called The Seven Seas, which is now a thing called Zack Storm, which is on Netflix.
Yep.
And there's one more.
And it's funny from those 20 ideas how they all kind of stayed relevant and stayed, you know?
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, because at the core of it, it's still just a fun idea, and we're not straying too far from, hey, let's first have fun with this. Let this be something that is just a fun idea. That I think the best stuff is the stuff that if you can remember it. I know that I used to pray. I would walk home from school every day from a junior high, and I used to pray that a CIA agent would stumble out of the bushes, bloodied, and go, get this to the president. Some kind of,
adventure.
Some microchip adventure. And then I was off and running because the bad guys were after me. And that would occupy my mind on the walk home. But it's those like little things that, those little moments in your life when you were a kid that, you were like,
play with it,
you just wished would happen to you. And, you find some way to,
express that.
Express it in a story. So
I love it.
Yeah.